Hi, Coach Alexander here again with over 20 years of experience of helping people achieve their professional dreams, to grow, to improve their careers, and to get into top schools. Not only MBAs, finance, masters, PhDs, even LLMs. But many of the clients that we work with are business and executives who want to change their career and go to the top schools. Now, of course, as you can imagine, many of the people come to me or to one of my colleagues and they say, okay, here's the list of schools that I want. And they take the top 5 schools from whichever ranking there is. So let me first address the idea of rankings. Rankings are interesting, and you will find more information about this, but you need to be wise in how you interpret them, okay? Because they measure different things, and they put different weights on different variables. There's also the potential of some response bias when they collect their information, etc. The other thing that you will notice is every publication you go to gives you a completely different ranking of the top schools depending on the criteria they use. But what you should do is review them, understand the criteria they use, and take it with a grain of salt. But one of the things that you will notice regularly is that whatever the top schools are, and usually you find a few that are always in the top, and you find the other ones that move around, in some cases, depending on from very good sources, whether it's the Financial Times or World News and Reports or even The Economist. You can look at a ranking, and a school that's ranked number 1 in one of them is number 9 in another. Well, it all depends on what they use. However, what you do know is the top schools are the top schools, and they're the top schools for a reason. So even if they move around and play musical chairs and things like that, they're the top schools. Now, before we go on and talk about some of these schools and talk about how to think and plan your application and present your application, the question is, well, what school should I pick and where should I go to? The most challenging cases for me is when somebody comes and says, I only want to go to this one school, the end. And very often it's a top school. And the odds, which you could find yourself on the internet and everywhere else, the odds are always against you. Because the people who are applying are already pre-selecting themselves. So it is unlikely that somebody with a low GMAT score is going to be part of the applicant pool. In fact, some of the schools give you information that says the people who applied had a GMAT score of 700, and the entering class had an average GMAT score of 720, for example. So it already tells you that people are pre-selecting themselves, okay? But there is, yes, a logic, in some ways a business logic and a communication logic, and there is an art to making great applications. Now please notice what I'm talking about. If you've got bad test scores, unless you've done something really spectacular, which we can discuss if you have a particular case, we're always, find our information, contact us, we'll be happy to talk with you. Why? Why would you waste your time and a lot of money on doing essays to schools where you are out of range? So forget about fair or unfair, but the data is out there. The schools tell you what they want. And of course, the things that the good schools pride are a good education. But if you didn't do so well, there's ways to manage it, and we know how to do that. A good GMAT score, it's difficult to slide in with a poor GMAT score. We saw the statistics. Look at our other videos where we explain to you the ideas. They're looking for something special about you, about your professional experience, something interesting. They like people who have learned skills, who can demonstrate that they've learned that they've performed. The industry doesn't really matter as much. Of course, you're going to see, and you can go school by school. You could waste your whole friggin' life looking at, oh, look, 20% came from consulting, 18% came from finance, X% came from military or government. Okay, that's friggin' fine. The trick is to make yourself appealing to the school. And the way you do that in a way is construct something that has both the rationality of a good business plan in which an investor might want to invest, combined with a passion and something that's more human about you, that has to deal with your values, that expresses who you are as a person. So they're looking for complete people. Just because you got a score of 800 does not mean you're going to be admitted to a school. So there have been cases of people with extremely high scores and they didn't get into anywhere because at that level the schools just didn't think that as people and what they've done in life or how they can communicate is consistent with what they want in their class. Now, very quickly, which schools are you going to choose? Well, you can have some dream schools. You got to be realistic, and of course, sometimes people have a very specific project. I've worked with one individual who, for example, he wanted to make a change from what he was doing in finance to applying things into the movie industry. So he had a particular set of schools in mind that may have connections to the movie industry. Another person I know really liked online publishing and managing online talent. She, of course, was targeting schools that maybe relate more to Silicon Valley. Other people know that they want to start either their own fund or they want to continue in finance or do something else. So they may be leaning more towards some other schools. However, apart from that, if you put your ego aside and you think about it logically, okay, if you get into a top 10 school globally, you can't lose. You can't lose. I mean, do you really think that the education at one school is so much better than an education at another top school, which according to some ranking may only be some decimal points behind? You know, rankings sell papers. The idea is also, where do you want to live and what do you want to do afterwards? Okay? So this is what I want to begin with. So when you select schools, select your wish schools, but create a portfolio so that you can diversify. Why? Because it's also, once you create a good application for one or two schools, then you've already gone through the thinking and processes and things like that. So before we end this video, let's talk about, just give you some ideas, and then we will later use this slide or in other videos in order to compare some of these schools or to tell you how to think about it. Here's what we do, okay? Dynamic training, individual attention, winning results. Why? Because people applying to top schools are champions. You've already been selected to the Olympics. You're already a winner, okay? Just to be able to go to the Olympics. And now, at that level, you are competing very often for one seat, 10 candidates for each seat. And different schools have different statistics if they only accept 10% of the people or less. And you have to remember, it's not 10% of all the people. It's 10% of the people that apply, and the people that apply have already pre-selected themselves because they understand the demands that the school has. Okay? So that's why we treat our MBA athletes as future potential. Okay? You can't treat an athlete the same way you're doing, some little kids' football or soccer games. So we have people, this is a partial list, and this is just MBAs. This doesn't even include finance programs, it doesn't include LLMs, It doesn't include Masters of Political Science that we've worked with people for, and a whole bunch of other international business programs. But let's sticking with the MBAs. Okay, why do we have a list? Well, first of all, this is a partial list. There's no way we can put it all on the board because there's a bunch of schools. But in general, and this is in no particular order, okay? So this is in no order of, this is not my ranking of which school is better. What I actually try to do is I try to mix them up, but keeping the good schools on top, okay? So these are the schools that many of our people want to go to, and those are the schools that they get into. So in the USA, you've probably heard of these schools. You can put them in whatever order of your own preference you want, but these are the big boys and girls. These are the ones that are known almost everywhere around the world, and some of them have special programs for special people. But if you create a good story, if you go to to just about any of these schools, especially over here, you're going to be in good shape. You're going to get a great education. You're going to be happy. Same thing for full-time MBA in Europe. We can talk about the differences later, but these are recognized institutions. INSEAD, highly international. IMD, very small MBA compared to others that looks for more senior people. It's not an executive, but it's between a full and an executive. AGC, of course, which is growing in popularity incredibly, and they have a lot of international programs. London Business School, depending on whom you ask. Some rank it as the #1 in Europe. Some rank it as the #1 in the world. Okay, it depends. Others rate INSEAD #1 in the world. And I don't mean just in Europe, I mean in the world. When you mix all of these together. So the rankings show you different things. But the point is also what makes sense to you. Okay, we can talk more about the length of the programs and things. And of course, for executive programs, we mostly send people to global executive programs because we work with a very international clientele. Global executive programs are amazing for these people. They very often have more than one campus. They get to work at the same time that they are studying, or if they're entrepreneurs, they get to put their project together. But it's a slightly different game where you're going to be working while studying. All of these are great schools. We don't care which school you go to as long as it's right for you and as long as you're happy. And that's the most important part. And you can allow yourself to be relaxed in the sense that I want to do something in finance, but I don't have to only go to Columbia. We'll probably get you in, but you've got lots of options. Moreover, just about, although some of these schools may be known for some things or other things, just about all of these schools have an entrepreneurship center, a leadership center, seminars, international clubs and events by country and by region, specific things that you may be interested in, whether it's corporate responsibility, whether it's particular finance, etc., etc. They're all developing these things. I'm not saying they're equivalent. I'm saying they're all great. And going to one school versus the other is not nearly as big a deal as most people try to scare you into thinking. So don't fall into that, I gotta absolutely pick the right school. You gotta have your reasons. And then when you do the application, you create your reasons. So what we're gonna do in the next video, after just kind of talking to you about, about how some of the rankings work and things like that, and now that we've put some names of good schools into your mind, is we're going to talk to you about the logic of the application itself. This is Alexander. There's more information here on our website. Contact us. We'll be happy to talk to you.